Pig from 2021 stars Nicolas Cage and is often compared to John Wick in that it is an animal kidnap movie, only this time it's Nicolas Cage's truffle pig. He lives out in the woods in the Pacific Northwest. Somebody steals his pig, and the movie is his journey to get the pig back. Right on the face of it, the only comparison to John Wick is the animal getting stolen. But where John Wick relishes vengeful violence from start to finish, Pig explores some deeper and I would argue more valuable themes, such as a high level of expertise and a reputation being earned by said level of expertise being more valuable than power and money. So don't go into this movie thinking you're going to see John Wick, only it's with a pig. It's a completely different thing. I watched this movie with my wife and I probably enjoyed discussing it with her after it was done than actually watching the movie itself. I gave it 3 stars because I thought it was fine. I didn't love it, and at times it felt like I was watching a TV show. It didn't feel like it was as deep as it wanted to be. But again, I still think there's some really great themes that come along with a pretty simple story. My wife and I are both animal lovers, so we go into these kinds of movies with extreme caution. And without spoiling anything, I will say that nothing is depicted on screen that will make you squeamish if you're an animal lover. And at risk of spoiling it even further, the movie isn't really about the pig. Birth from 2004 is only the second Jonathan Glazer movie I've ever seen, the first one being Under the Skin, which I think is a wonderful movie. But Birth stars Nicole Kidman and was very controversial upon its release. Kidman plays a character named Annie whose husband died out on a jog 10 years ago, and she's trying to put her life back together and is engaged to be married to Danny Houston after a long grieving period for her first husband, when all of a sudden a 10-year-old boy appears in her life and claims to be the reincarnation of the dead husband. This sets Annie and her family on a strange journey of grief and navigating what is going on with this kid. This movie does have its fans, but it certainly has a lot of haters. And I can completely see why. This movie has the adult in a child's body trope, which is something that I find completely creepy and tend to avoid if I know that the movie has to do with that particular gimmick. However, I went into this one kind of blind because I've never seen a Nicole Kidman performance that I didn't enjoy, and I just saw this one floating around the ether. I must have saw it on Twitter or something and realized it was on Canopy and just jumped in. There is one particularly controversial scene that I knew what the scene was, so it's the such and such scene, and when they got to it, I was like, oh, here it comes. And I'm not going to mention it here. If you want to watch this movie, just know what you're getting in for. There's some extremely uncomfortable situations with a 10-year-old boy who is claiming to be the adult husband of Nicole Kidman's character. Having said all that, I think this movie is beautiful. I think it's a deep examination of grief and a great character study of someone who, quite frankly, never came back from it and never recovered from it. The characters in this movie are upper class, rich people basically living in New York City, and it was shot on location, so everything looked really opulent and nice throughout this whole movie, and it was just shot beautifully. There's some long and ponderous lingering shots in this film, which can be very risky in general, but I think it all works here. I think a lot of people will bounce off this movie because of the premise or because they cannot identify with Nicole Kidman's character, and that's completely understandable. I totally get that, and that's a valid response to this movie. And I don't know if I'll ever watch it again, but I enjoyed it. Private Property from 1960 is a really sleazy, I want to say exploitation, but I don't even know if they were using that word to describe films in 1960. It's a film that was considered lost for over 30 years or something like that, and it was found and restored. The movie is about two drifters in California who start the film by intimidating a gas station owner into getting some food and drink for free, and then they don't carjack, they force an insurance salesman to take them for a ride to follow a beautiful blonde woman played by Kate Manx in one of only two roles that she ever played in, basically so that they can stalk and rape her. The dynamic between the two criminals is one that we've seen before. One of them is of mid-level intelligence and a little bit of charisma, and the other one is just kind of a dummy. And they take shelter in a currently unoccupied house that neighbors the house of their victim. So in the movie, we're stalking Kate Manx with these two guys. And again, this movie is super sleazy. It is filled with innuendo and euphemisms, just filled with them. And also, there was something in this film that reminded me of the pre-code films of the 1930s, which is they would have scenes of women just undressing and getting dressed again together. It was not sexual, I guess you could argue, but this was just something that they put on the screen for eye candy and fan service back then. And there's a few scenes in this movie that have Kate Manx just changing her clothes, and it's like, okay, I get what this is for. And though I do think it goes a little bit deeper than, hey, look at this, it's, hey, you're looking at this, you're just like them. It was one of the many pieces of the puzzle of this movie that didn't quite add up to the sum of its parts. There are a lot of themes in this movie to chew on, a lot of things to think about and unpack. There are many articles and blog posts and opinion pieces about this movie and what it's actually trying to say. And at the end of the day, it's cool that we are able to see this movie now because it's been recovered and restored, and it's cool to see something that was once considered lost. And for what it's worth, Kate Manx really was a beautiful woman and really was a feast on the eyes in this movie. So if you want to watch a really subversive, sleazy, grimy, innuendo-filled movie that was way ahead of its time, I would suggest Private Property. I also noticed there's a remake of this movie starring Ashley Benson, which is really low rated, but I'm a huge Ashley Benson fan, so I might end up watching that at some point. Frankenhooker from 1990. I believe this is the first trauma film I've ever seen. Right in the beginning of this movie, I was like, oh, this is going to be good, because the opening scene is our main character, Jeffrey, played by James Lawrence, playing with a brain in a dish that's hooked up to all these batteries on his kitchen table, and there's an eyeball in the middle of the brain, and he's trying to get it to look around, and he has a monitor. I'm like, oh man, this is so cool. Cheesy mad scientist in the kitchen. Like, his mom comes in and is like, hey, let me get the ketchup. It's so funny. And I was like, oh man, I'm gonna love this movie. I'm not gonna put too much weight in criticizing James Lawrence's acting, because this is a trauma movie. It's supposed to be trashy, funny, weird, just throwaway comedy, but we spend a lot of time with him. And although over the runtime of the film I did get to appreciate the character he was playing, he was really acting in some kind of uncanny valley where he was trying to be wacky and not pulling it off or something. The real star of the movie, of course, is Patty Mullen, who plays Elizabeth, who dies early in the film. She's his girlfriend or fiance, I can't remember, and he wants to bring her back to life, so he has to murder a bunch of prostitutes and find the best parts from them and create a Frankenstein with his girlfriend's head, who he stole from the crime scene when she died in the beginning of the movie. The problem is she finally enters the movie with only about 25 minutes left in the movie, and she gives a comedic performance for the ages. The way she walks, the way she talks, her facial expressions that she makes are just so off the wall, over the top. and amazing that I wish there was more of her throughout the film. This one was also filmed on location, and there's some really cool shots of old Times Square back when New York City was a little bit more sleazy before it got cleaned up. So there's definitely a level of nostalgia, and the practical effects were great. And a lot of times with movies like this, when they were trying to be trashy, there can be some things in these movies that don't age quite well. But I think why people love this movie even to this day is that it's pretty timeless in that there's no dated jokes, there's no referential jokes. It's just a story of the characters in the movie, completely self-contained, and there's not much that is of its time in this movie, if that makes sense. I had a lot of fun watching this movie. I'd love to see Patty Mullen in some other stuff, and she's very well loved for this role. I saw some pictures of her at conventions. She still dresses up as Elizabeth, let's say post-surgery Elizabeth at conventions. So that's really cool. And I think that's going to do it for this one. Thank you for making it to the end. And if you like these short movie reviews, I have a whole playlist of them on my channel. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next one.